Hi everyone, Mckenzie here, care activist. Raise awareness of unpaid carers, as you can tell. Well, hopefully you'll check out some of my other videos if you're new to this channel. And basically what I'm going to present today is why carers, I'm talking about unpaid carers, like those caring for a relative or friend, not paid to do so. And whoever they're caring for is suffering long-term illness, not just a broken toenail. But in regards to caring for someone, they should be protected by human rights. It's not always the case, and I probably mentioned this later on in the presentation. And I want to try and keep this fairly short. But human rights are a definite important issue for unpaid or informal carers. So, okay, what will I be talking about during this video? Well, what are human rights? It's not always easy. We ask someone about human rights, they probably would say, protection from our very basic needs in existence and expression, things like that. In fact, what's probably, well, I'll go into this a bit later on. I don't want to go into it now. What else we got? Human rights acts to pay attention to, and there's actually quite a lot, to be fair. Remember, I'm linking this to unpaid carers because there's so many rights that you might need to be aware of, but these are the ones that I feel or that I've known to help unpaid carers if they find themselves in a sticky situation. And then, as usual, I'll conclude things, I'll sum things up, just to try and get some of the main points across. So, okay, let's begin. What actually are human rights? What is so important about them? Well, as it says here, it's a crucial piece of legislation in law that protects the fundamental rights and freedoms of individuals. But we're sort of going to take that further, rather than just individuals, because it means everyone, obviously. But how does this relate to those caring for someone who is going through long-term illness, whether it be physical or mental ill health? And we're talking about, obviously, the Human Rights Act 1998, which incorporates the European Convention on Human Rights into UK law. Now, as mentioned before, while human rights doesn't really mention unpaid carers, it is highly relevant to unpaid carers' rights and well-being. The trick is, if you're caring for someone, how do you recognize that your rights are being infringed upon? And I'll go into this actually. So let's start on what sort of rights you as a carer would need to take note of. So I'm going to go for each one, not from here, but I'll just give you a little list. So obviously the first one is the right to private life and family life. I might try and give some examples as well, actually, but this is as it stands in the Human Rights Act, and it gives extra information. Article 8, if you're actually looking for it. Protection from inhuman or degrading treatment, which is Article 3. Right to life, Article 2. Freedom from discrimination, Article 14. Right to a fair trial, Article 6. Right to freedom of expression, Article 10. Right to education, Protocol 1, Article 2. Right to protection of property, Protocol 1, Article 1. Now you think to yourself, oh, hang on, you've listed all these rights. Where does unpaid carers fit in? And I could see, one, I should have highlighted it in red. Straight away, discrimination. One thing I do remember, and I often hear from other lectures regarding human rights, is that when it comes to discrimination, you've got the biggest one that sticks out is discrimination by association. I don't know if that's the correct term. You're caring for someone who suffers a vulnerability. They're not given access to something like, a cinema or a shop or something. I don't know. And I should have actually explained it when I got to that part of that slide, but I thought, let me just pinpoint a few things. So you're trying to navigate your loved one who's in a wheelchair, and they say no, they're not allowed in here, or they can't use the loo or whatever that is. And straight away, that highlights a discrimination case. They might not be discriminating against you, but because they're discriminating against your loved one, you actually have a case regarding human rights. In fact, all of these things, you might not even think so. I'll try and point them out. All of these things here should be paid attention to. Some more than others at times, but the discrimination one definitely stands out most of all. And even if you don't think, okay, fair enough, my loved one, or whether the mental or physical health, they're being discriminated against. There are situations where even unpaid carers can be discriminated against, and just trying to recognize, the worst discrimination case, the more you can quote these rights. So let's start. The right to private and family life. So straight away, protection. The right for respect for private family life is particularly important for unpaid carers. This ensures that the carers and those that they care for maintain personal relationships without unnecessary interference by public authorities. So those who, I can't give a clear example. I suppose I think this is linked in some sense to what a carer's assessment will pick up on. And it could be adaptations to the home, in a sense that you have a loved one that's disabled. They don't want to pay for adaptations, or they take things away that could help your loved one, and this does impede on family life. And right there, that's something you'll be quoting. When I say adaptations, like getting up the stairs, how to help your loved one get up the stairs, and then the local authorities might say, well, we're not paying for that anymore, we're going to take it away. That's one of the, I think, an ideal example I can think of. I'm sure there's better, but the interfering, I suppose, with with your life, you can't get on with your thing. I'm sure there's much better interpretation. This thing off the top of my head. Support for carers' needs. So I suppose if a carer is struggling due to a lack of appropriate support, this could actually infringe on their rights. This again, a lot of these will go back to carers' assessment. The local authorities have a duty to assess the needs of carers and ensure they receive adequate support to maintain their own well-being and personal relationships. And I think a good idea, I suppose, is if you're caring for someone that needs a lot of support, you're not working, hardly earning any money, the state refused to give you any benefits, you're in poverty, and you're hardly able to even eat, or what you're eating isn't the best of foods. Straight away, a carer's assessment needs to flag that up. And if it doesn't, you just links to human rights and carers' rights, something that should be quoted and taken action on. Balancing care responsibility. So this all links to Article 8, by the way. Now this can be used to argue that carers should have the support necessary to balance the care responsibility with their right to their own life, privacy and well-being. I think this is when someone is forced to care for someone who needs a lot of support and you're not given any support to do so. So you're infringing on someone's right. And even if the person wants to care, I suppose the majority of us want to be there for our loved ones who are, going through poor ill health. It doesn't mean the authorities should just assume that, because you're not paid to do so, you just go ahead and get on with it. And that means that you're unable to balance adequate care because you're overwhelmed. So let's go on to the next one. This is protection from inhuman or degrading treatments. Well, these are not the best pictures. These are the pictures that I can find, really, to be honest, that I already have. To relief from overwhelming, when I was explaining that just earlier on, carers may sometimes find themselves in situations where their responsibilities are so demanding. I think this picture does actually fit this sort of theme. So it's so demanding that they face physical or emotional exhaustion. And I think this is due to respite, to be honest. Basically, respite is that, again, you're caring for someone that needs, almost 24-hour support and care. The state won't intervene. The authorities won't intervene and just say, get on with it. Now, I'm not saying all caring situations are the same, and they clearly are not. There are situations where you're providing unpaid care to someone that needs a huge amount of support, and what should not happen is carers will face burnout, and this happens anyway. There are situations where carers actually do face burnout, but if a lack of support leaves a carer in a situation where they suffer extreme stress, exhaustion, or literally unable to care for themselves, this actually is considered degrading or inhuman treatment. It can be quoted as this way, and it runs the risk of it. So support, again, in the Human Rights Act, support for the cared for, I did mention this earlier. So if a person being cared for is left in a condition that could, be deemed inhuman, degrading due to insufficient support, inadequate access to health care, neglect, or living conditions, then the local authorities may be in breach of Article 3. I suppose a good example, is continuing on from an unpaid carer caring for someone. Now they're actually now overwhelmed in that caring role. They're crying for help from the local authorities, who don't do an assessment. They say, well, there's no time, we don't have the resources, we don't have finances, and they've not raised this. They didn't even do an assessment. And what happens is now the carer is now in poverty, they can't access certain things, living conditions deteriorate, not to the fault of the carer, because they've raised this with the local authorities. And this now leads to a breach. This is why carers assessments are so important. Even, I always say to carers who come to my groups, scream and shout with those carers, even if they expect nothing from it. That carers assessment is now saved. It's in the local authorities database, whatever. It protects the carer if there was something that's flagged. If you don't have a carers assessment, then the local authority can always sort of say, well, we didn't know. So I always say to carers, get that assessment. Even if you think, nothing comes out of it, it's not just about funding and payments for certain things. It's what does the local authority need to know so they can step in, or they say, okay, this is a serious situation, we need to act on it. And I'll say this time and time and time again, it's not always about the funding and the payment and it's not always about that. It's about your human rights being recorded and protection in law. Let's go on to the next law, right to life. So this is a critical one. Let's see what I put there. Duty to protect life. Basic, this one. It also places an obligation on public authorities to protect life, which, I'll give a fair good example, which can be relevant if the health or safety of the carer or the person they care for is at risk. For example, if the carer is not receiving adequate support, this could pose risks of physical or mental health. Authorities have a duty to intervene. Again, carers assessment. In fact, most if not all of these things relate to the carers assessment. If the local authority says they don't know, and even then that doesn't fully protect them, to be honest, then they won't intervene. And I do say, this is another thing I say to carers, tell the local authorities, even if it's not in the carers assessment, tell someone, maybe at the carers centre or whoever does these assessments, or care coordinator or social worker, tell them. It doesn't have to be within the assessment. They need to know it down on record so they don't sort of say, oh, we didn't know. An example anyway is the person's deteriorating, they're not being given adequate healthcare support, not being put in that care package or that care plan, and they're saying to the carer, get on with it. You're the carer, you're their loved one, you do it. They're shirking their responsibilities, and the carer gets overwhelmed. Another good example is if adequate support is too complex to get hold of, so the bar set very high to try and get in, like a care worker or someone to assess the needs of the cared for and even the carer. That can be a breach as well in some sense. And this is really extreme. In some situations, there is, I suppose the state could say, look, there's too many carers. So what we're going to do is we're just going to ignore them and hope that they die off due to their caring roles. And that could mean like the cared for is suffering long-term illness. But if there's a cut-off, a delay in package, the care package, there may be hope that, the local authorities could hope that the cared for will die out because they can't get access to the care package. So it's a very extreme example. It is. Not to say it doesn't happen around the world in some places. It's just something to take note of. And that's duty to protect life. Okay, so let's get on to the next bit on the right to life. Care health risks. So in this case, right, the carers experience burnout and extreme mental health strain, potentially risking health and life. And the Article 2, as I mentioned on this thing, may, not always, but may come into play. Again, obligating authorities to ensure proper safeguards are in place for the carer's well-being. Tricky one to quote, really. Not, and again, I'd say the majority of carers don't always know this. This is the problem we face now, I suppose, in the UK, is that there are, plenty of times when carers do go through health risks due to burnout. Does this ultimately create a breach where the carer says, I'm taking you to court? I'm afraid not. Time and time again, I keep hearing this carer say they've gone for burnout, and I say, well, okay, what's been done? Nothing. But again, who on certain situations, who is responsible regarding these things? And right to life, Article 2, can be used. It's really tricky, this one. This is a big one. As I mentioned before, freedom from discrimination. So what do we have here? Equal access to services. And I did point this earlier on in the video. Someone's not well trained in care awareness or trained in support for the cared for needs can discriminate. But on Article 14, it ensures protection from discrimination on the environmental rights outlined in the Human Rights Act 1998, that this means that the unpaid carer must not face discrimination in accessing services, financial support, or resources based on a caregiving role. Remember, I talked about the wheelchair situation. That's probably one of the most common examples you probably hear. You can't come in here because that person is in that wheelchair and they might block an entrance or whatever. Oh no, you can't use this access. You can't come into this GP surgery because of such and such. I suppose extreme examples is, oh well, I don't like this particular person's race, they can't come in here, and that sort of thing. So equal access to services. Recognising carers, this is quite an interesting one. Carers may experience indirect discrimination, for example, like let's say they're unable to access services due to their caregiving, being denied flexible working arrangement. This was a very big one, I think, a couple of years back. The case of in Italy, I should have really put the name, I completely forgot, but it's just coming off the top of my head. The employer in Italy was taken to task with the UN regarding this, and they won, because they weren't given a flexible working arrangement. The carer did warn them, saying, "Listen, I've fallen in a situation where I'm going to have to care." And the reason why this is such a big one is because most of us will find a situation where we will have to care for a family member, even though we're working. It's just going to happen. You can't just dismiss someone or slowly push them out because they end up in a caring role. There might be negotiations on how this can go forward, but there are certain practices that can happen because a workplace puts money or whatever before the employee's needs, or it can happen. So authorities must ensure that carers are treated fairly and not disadvantaged due to the caregiving responsibilities. And sorry if I'm not giving exact examples. I'm just sort of thinking off the top of my head on what I've seen and heard. So right to fair trial. Challenging unfair. This is a good one. Challenging unfair decisions. Now, carers might need to challenge decisions made by local authorities or healthcare providers, such as denial of a care's assessment, or withdrawal of a services. Remember, I talked about adaptations to the home. Local authorities say, "Well, we're not paying for certain things anymore," so they don't leave it there; just take it away. So the carer just can't get upstairs to use the loo or whatever. The care's assessment is a big one. And a good one of this is someone's done a sort of audit at a local authority to state how many care assessments has been done. And it was a very, very low number. I'm sure they'd be asking, well, hang on a second. The other databases, patient database shows that there are a number of carers with high needs. So why are care assessments not being done? And this can sort of snowball into a situation where they're taken to task. As why has there been a denial of care assessments? And that means it could state that the local authority don't really need to intervene because they're not doing those assessments, so they don't really know. So anyway, carers or those who look into care assessment might decide to challenge. And this means, Article 6 guarantees the right to a fair trial, meaning unpaid carers must have legal, access to legal processes to contest those decisions. Why are you denying me? What's the reason for denial of a care's assessment? Access to justice. So, okay, if an unpaid carer or informal carer feels their rights under the Human Rights Act have been violated, like they're not receiving necessary support, now they have a right to take the case to court and be given a fair hearing. Okay, I should quick speed things up really, because I don't want to, have a habit of making a video run a bit too long. So advocate, so right to freedom of expression. As you can see, I'm not brought out the best picture, but I think that's the only picture I can think of where someone is frustrated and advocating for rights. Unpaid carers have the right to express their concerns or complaints about the level of support or treatment they or the person they care for receive. Right, so this is, I'm thinking of mental health in some sense, mental health care. There can be situations where, and I give a good extreme examples, PALS, patient advice liaison service in hospitals, can delay things and hide things, and they hope the carer can go away. And I want to take, it should be in a policy somewhere on how the complaint system is working, and it should be shown to carers to have a look at that policy and that time frame, because what you don't want is hospital services, both mental and physical health, to be honest, to hide these things and keep the level of complaints low or hide them. It can happen, and it can put things that make it so complex to get a resolution of a complaint that the carer just gives up. There's a name to this actually. I don't know what the name is when they pressure the carer not to complain or raise concerns. One day I'll probably come across it. It's not just the carer, also the carer should be able to advocate on the behalf of the person they care for without fear of retribution from local authorities or care providers. So retribution means, you're struck off from using those health services because you've made a complaint that they don't want to deal with, or they feel that it wasn't their fault. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't complain or raise it. And again, these are serious examples I'm giving. But this goes under the advocating for rights, so linked to the right to freedom of expression. Okay, so what's the next one? I think it's raising awareness. It's something I do all the bloody time. This right also supports carers in campaigning for better resources, highlighting issues with social care, or even challenging the government policy affecting unpaid carers. So and there's the course I've actually got around on presenting, because I think I need to update that course. It's a bit extreme, I feel, looking back at it, the way I did the course. But it's so important that carers have an idea about campaigning for better resources, highlighting issues with social care, and challenging government policy. And the reason why this is a big issue now is because we are aware the NHS is struggling, it's on its knees. And because it's on its knees, there's going to be more likely situations where resources are not often there. And in the human rights, it's only fair, it really is only fair that people campaign, as in the right to do, for better resources. If authorities or health care providers start intervening and interfering with freedom of expression, they take them to court. So I think we only 2 left, I think. So right to education is a big problem around the world, not just for unpaid care, but a lot of other places around the world. I think it's carers education needs. Carers education needs. If this is a good one regarding young carers, and I think it's a big problem now, to be honest. Now, if a young carer is being denied educational opportunities due to the caregiving responsibilities, it's a violation of their rights to education. Now, the state has a duty, local authorities has a duty to ensure that young carers are supported so they can fully access education. This is a big problem as it stands now. I know there's some charities advocating for carers' rights regarding education needs, and to be honest, I don't even think these rights are exercised. How on earth can you expect a young carer to start quoting Human Rights Act? No way. But there are organizations trying to fight very hard regarding carers' education needs. And it doesn't have to be young carer. It could be those with a learning disability, and they're caring for someone at that time as well, and they don't know about their rights and being denied education because of the caring role. So it's not just young carers, but I do think the majority is young carers. Right. So I think it's the last one, and this is right. So rights to protection of property. Article 1, access to financial resources. Again, another big problem, really. The article can protect unpaid carers' rights to receive benefits or financial support, to which they're entitled to. Now, if a carer is denied financial support without due process, they might be able to argue that the right to protection of property is being violated. Remember, your carer's assessment is there a risk that you will lose your rent or property in regards to your caring role? You're at work, you've raised this with a local authority, and they just sit on it. They don't do anything. You got the other one, safeguard the care. Well, I've just mentioned it, didn't I? So the provisions also protects the property and assets of the person receiving care. So it's not just the care, it's the person receiving the care as well. So ensuring their rights are not compromised by poor financial management or even exploitation. So it doesn't always go down to the local authority. It can be unpaid care. I'm not saying they're all angels. There can be safeguarding issues if someone's exploiting the cared for. But still, the carers can be exploited as well. They could be struggling with employment. They've raised this. They're not getting any income, and the property's at risk. And I think a good example, suppose, again, it's extreme. Healthcare provider. Yep, I can go for this one. Mental health care provider. What's the word for it? I've completely forgotten. But they're withholding services. That a person's mental ill health is deteriorating. They have property, and it becomes a conflict of interest because that person has property and their mental health deteriorating. It means they'll only intervene when they have fully secured the property. Now, I think there will be at times, if there's a link, there's a conflict of interest regarding this, because on one hand, you're not really treating the person's mental health needs, finding out that they've got property to protect, but because of the mental health needs, the person's not doing it, but the carer might raise it. You see what I mean? So this is a tricky one, but on certain accounts, they're not safeguarding recipient's property. There might be reasons why safeguarding can come into this, and why the mental health services would need to intervene on that. But there's got to be good reason why they're not taking other steps, rather than on one hand not giving specific access to mental health treatment and then acting very quickly to safeguard property, and ignoring family or carers' concerns. It's a sad case, it really is. So I do say to carers, do know your rights. So I'm going to sum this all up. So even though carers are not mentioned, even though we know carers aren't mentioned in the Human Rights Act, this goes to show there are actually protections, but you need to know the law. You really do need. It's unfair. How many local authorities or health providers quote or tell carers their human rights? I'm sure there might be a small minority of them, but majority, I don't think so. It's a big issue. So it really is, as I'm saying, up to carers to know their rights. And that might mean care will just go to a solicitor, and then the solicitors will say, let's have a look at this. And well, yep, this is a breach. But you're not going to go to a solicitor if you don't have an idea on why carers need to pay attention to human rights. This is a very big one. Laws can and often do change. So if there's a breach again and again and again, laws will bend to adapt to it. And it goes back to this sort of thing. I'm going to see if I can quickly go back as to why laws can change, and it's just due to these things. Freedom of expression and raising that awareness. The more awareness that is raised regarding breaches of human rights, concerns about access to healthcare, or major concerns, and there has been a lot in the UK, a lot across the world, that where laws will now need to change. And a big one is the revamp of the Mental Health Act, 1983, been revamped because of, again, too many breaches, I would have imagined. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. I've waffled on again and again, but I do hope those who see this video do share it or write a supporting blog. And I like to say, if you like the video, do a like. I'm not 100% on all of these things. I'm not an expert in law. The stuff I've just come across and thought this is so important. Over the years, I've come across this sort of thing. So do like and subscribe to my channel. I'll try my best to raise more awareness on unpaid carers and the importance of not just rights, but other things carers should take note of. These are your rights. You really got to protect them. And there are breaches. It's just whether do you know that they're happening in front of you. These rights are there to protect you, even if they don't outright mention carers. It's down to what support you can get in order to exercise your rights. Thank you for watching.